First came Furniture City. Others called it River City. But of all the nicknames for Grand Rapids, none have struck gold more than Beer City, USA. A title tapped on GR back in 2012.
And Troy and I turning to the Grand Rapids Public Museum archives to learn all about the hoppy history and the path to the perfect pour.
In 2009, the Beer City, USA poll was born during a time when craft beer was booming. Grand Rapids topped the poll in 2012, tying with Asheville, North Carolina. The next year, GR won. It wasn't even close. And the poll's keg was kicked forever.
So I think if we were Beer City USA when they stopped giving it, that means we're Beer City forever.
Okay, Beer City forever.
It's official.
Not a bad title to have. What do you have to do to get a title like that? What has Grand Rapids done to earn it?
Well, I think that in modern times, the title Beer City had to do with the quantity and the quality of the beer that was being made in Grand Rapids. And so one of the things that I think is really cool is sort of how beer and brewing in Grand Rapids has come full circle, really. According to Albert Baxter, who's one of the historians of Grand Rapids, the first person to brew beer here was a guy named John Pinnell. But he's not really what we would call a professional. That goes to a guy named Christoph Kusterer, who comes a little bit later in the 1840s, and he's from Germany. He's been officially trained and has that title brewmaster in German Braumeister.
Kuster eventually bought Pinnell's little operation and started his own brewing company on GR's west side, creating the city's first official brewery in 1844.
As Grand Rapids is growing as a city, the demand for beer is increasing, and so these breweries are opening up in different neighborhoods around town. These are calendars that the breweries would put out every year, so this was one way they would advertise. They use little kids on their calendar to sell beer.
Which 100% would
not
be
fly
acceptable today.
Yeah. Not fly today. But using pretty ladies to sell beer, that's a pretty standard tactic. One of my favorites is this one right here. And this is a beer bottle from the Fry Brothers Brewing Company. They brewed over on Coldbrook. And the thing that's so cool about this is it actually has a little bit of beer left in it from about 1875 or so.
And beer ages like fine wine, of course.
Yeah.
It would be awesome.
So it probably wouldn't taste too good anymore, but this bottle is still sealed.
Pretty soon, though, came a big change that would shake up the industry. Around the 1880s, refrigerated train cars were invented. That allowed bigger brands like Anheuser-Busch to ship products to cities across the country, including Grand Rapids, pouring onto their territory.
So what they decided to do was actually a pretty clever and effective tactic. In 1893, 6 of the local breweries here in Grand Rapids banded together. They closed down their individual little breweries, and they built a huge brewery, and they called their consolidated operation the Grand Rapids Brewing Company. And it says right on here that they were brewing 250,000 barrels of beer a year in this huge facility. And so until very recently, when Founders expanded, there was nobody in Grand Rapids that was brewing at this scale. So these are photographs of all the guys who ran the different companies that consolidated, and they became the officers in the Grand Rapids Brewing Company. And my favorite thing is all of their mustaches.
Yeah, I guess that was a requirement.
Pretty much.
To own a brewery. Back in the day, and I guess today as well.
Yeah. Facial hair does sort of go along with brewing, yeah.
History repeats itself.
Mustaches and all, they found success. Forrest says that brewing company had a large enough scale at that point to keep up with Anheuser-Busch, and they were pretty effective at fighting off the big guys.
But then Prohibition happens.
Right, so 1919, Prohibition becomes the law of the land, and all of the breweries, basically all over the country, have to shut down. It puts an end to all brewing everywhere, legal brewing in the country.
Yeah, it definitely didn't stop.
Right. People were still drinking. They would find a way.
So Prohibition ends in 1933, but according to Forrest, the beer scene never really refilled in GR. A couple of places were close, like Fox Deluxe, which bought the old Grand Rapids Brewing Company building in the 40s and held on to it for 10 years.
We are lucky enough to have the hat here of the Fox Deluxe beer delivery driver was saved by his daughter and donated to the museum.
Still though, Coors, Budweiser, and other big-time breweries controlled the market, so Fox Deluxe went out of business.
That brewery gets torn down during urban renewal in the 1960s, and there's really no such thing as local beer here in Grand Rapids.
And that was the story for almost 20 years. Local breweries struggling to serve up a successful business until the mid-1980s. A craft beer comeback started by Larry Bell in Kalamazoo, followed by other places like Founders, and even the Grand Rapids Brewing Company name got a revival.
So lots of these little places are starting to have some success, and then, Founders is continuing to grow. And it really, I think, started a culture here, where these guys, they had the mindset that a rising tide would raise all their boats. They helped each other out instead of thinking of each other as competitors. And really created something pretty special.
And the people agree. In the last 8 years, Grand Rapids has been voted Best Beer Town, Best Beer Scene, and Best Beer City in USA Today reader polls. GR, Grand Rapids, living up to its title.
And I feel like the city has embraced that title of Beer City USA. We've seen it on billboards before.
Yep.
How do you think that title has shaped the identity of this city?
Yeah, Grand Rapids, has really embraced it, which I think is a great thing. It's led to a lot of beer tourism, people coming to Grand Rapids and checking it out.
According to a 2019 economic impact study, beer tourism helped boost the economy, supporting 378 local jobs and accounting for 94,000 visitors who spent $24 million.
Do you think those men with the mustaches who are part of that consolidation would look at the beer scene in Grand Rapids today? What do you think their reaction would be?
I think they would be really proud of it, but I think they would also be really confused by some of the crazier beers that we've got out here. But yeah, I think the idea that we can brew our beer locally and sort of use it as a center for our community, I think they would appreciate that. Grand Rapids has some really cool things that make it unique, and I think this is one of them.